Hi, everybody. My name is Miss Barbara, and I'm happy to be here with you today to share another lesson. So we are going to be talking more today about lifelong learning, and we'll start with our affirmation. The affirmation is, I will always look for ways to learn and be loving to others. Let's say it together twice more. I will always look for ways to learn and be loving to others. I will always look for ways to learn and be loving to others. So, we've been talking about the ways that the path of Jesus can challenge us and enrich our experience of life over our whole lifetime. And we have another story today that is an example of how our behavior, our actions, are a reflection of what we believe. So I think we'll just start with our story, and then we'll have some follow-up questions and conversation at the end. So the story is called The Temple Visit. It was Jonathan's first visit to the temple, and he didn't want to miss anything. There was so much to see. He had traveled all the way to the city with his parents and baby sister for Passover. The journey had taken several days. Now they were in the temple, and Jonathan watched everything with wide eyes. He wasn't actually in the temple itself. That holy place was only for the priests, but the expansive courtyards around the temple were like a city within a city. There were tall columns and pavement of marble in many colors that were beautiful even after thousands of pilgrims had walked over them. The sun was quite hot out in the open, but in the shade of the covered areas near the walls, it was cool. His mother had searched for a quiet corner to feed the baby and rest a little while his father had gone on to the inner court where the men could worship. Jonathan asked his mother if he could look around. She responded with motherly concern, "Yes, but don't go far." Jonathan walked among the booths where the merchants were selling doves. There were stacks and stacks of small cages, each with several doves inside. Their cooing added to the sounds of hundreds of lambs in makeshift pens bleating in the unfamiliar surroundings of the temple. There were sheep and bulls for sale too. He knew the animals were to be sold for sacrifice. It was part of making a pilgrimage to the temple. After buying a suitable animal, it was given to the priests who performed the sacrifice, cooked the meat, and returned it to the owner. His mother had wanted so much to get a lamb this year, but Jonathan knew that they had settled for doves, which was all they could afford after paying the required temple tax. As he passed through the animal pens, he came to money changers. They had small tables with stacks and bags of coins. Jonathan had never seen so many different kinds of coins in one place. The money changers traded the various coins from different regions outside of Jerusalem and provided the coins that were acceptable as offerings for the temple. Jonathan's father had already done business with one of them when they arrived, and he had argued unsuccessfully about the shockingly high fee that was charged for this simple service. The money they had saved all year for the trip was gone in an instant. Jonathan knew he should turn back towards where his mother and sister were waiting. Just as he decided he had gone far enough, he heard loud voices raised above the din of activity. People yelled in fear and anger. Animals raised their voices, adding to the cacophony. Jonathan ran to see what was happening. In the center of the commotion was a man with a short whip. He was knocking over tables, scattering coins everywhere. Sheep were running through the crowds, so Jonathan figured the man had opened their cages as well. The merchants were furious. Some tried to round up their frantic animals. Jonathan got closer as others ran away. Jonathan had once seen a crazy man who came out of the wilderness looking wild and dirty. His eyes looked wild too, like the eyes of a scared animal. The man with the whip didn't look like that. He stood straight and tall, and his clothes were simple and clean. Someone in the crowd said, "The rabbi suddenly got angry and started scattering the animals and knocking tables over." Jonathan wondered why a teacher would act that way in the temple during this holy time. Some priests came running down the steps into the courtyard. The priests were in charge of everything at the temple, and even Jonathan knew that they were powerful and could arrest and punish people who caused trouble. The rabbi did not look afraid. He gazed between the merchants and priests and said loud enough for all to hear, "Stop turning my father's house into a marketplace." Jonathan was fascinated with the scene. His visit to the temple was nothing like he had imagined. The teacher called the temple his father's house. What did that mean? Was his father the high priest? That didn't seem likely. As these thoughts were running through his head, he saw the priests approach the teacher. They seemed hesitant to get close, but one of them asked a question that Jonathan didn't hear. And the teacher's reply was also too low for Jonathan to catch all the words. The teacher stood his ground and looked at the priests with such strength of purpose that, in Jonathan's mind, he seemed taller and more priestly than anyone there. Then he strode out of the courtyard, followed by a group of men Jonathan hadn't noticed before. The priests left the scene. Jonathan stayed and listened to the crowd. Does he think he can just come in here and change everything? What about the law? The priests won't let him get away with this, that's for sure. These and other comments puzzled Jonathan. He planned to tell his father all about it. Perhaps his father knew who the man was and why he seemed to think the priests were wrong. Jonathan's mother was anxiously scanning the crowd for him when he returned. She was relieved to see him safe and offered him something to eat from the provisions she had brought. He had quite a story to tell of his first visit to the temple. So here are the discussion questions. The rabbi in the story, did you guess, was Jesus. Why do you think Jesus said the temple was like a marketplace? I liked the story of Jonathan and his family because I think it showed us why Jesus was so angry. They had saved up the very little bit of money that they had and made the journey and come and spent everything on the money changers and the dove that would be an offering. And so it was this business kind of that had sprung up around the visit to the temple that cost them dearly. And I think that is why Jesus got so mad. That's my thought. I wish that we were all together so I could hear your ideas about why he was so mad or why he said the temple was like a marketplace. Question 2. Jesus probably knew he couldn't make the priests and everyone change the way they were doing things at the temple, but he spoke out about it anyway. Why do you think he did? Why did he bother? If we know or we don't think that we have the power to change something, why should we even bother talking about it? Have you ever spoken up about something, even a little thing, that you thought was wrong? What did it feel like? This reminds me of a quote, and I'm not going to have I don't have it in front of me, but the quote is, speak the truth even if your voice shakes. I may be paraphrasing, but that all that comes to mind when I read that question, because it can be scary to speak the truth. It can be scary to stand up and speak out when something that's happening seems wrong. And the advice of that quote, and I think what Jesus was doing here too, is it's still important to express those things, even though it's hard sometimes. The last question asks about the fruit of the Spirit. And so before we talk about that question, let me just read this Bible verse from Galatians 5, 22, 23, 25. By contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. So these are the fruits of the Spirit that are spoken of in the Bible, like the fruits of a tree. And I'll give you the list one more time. I think it's a beautiful list. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So the question, our last question for our story is, which fruit of the Spirit did Jesus show in this story? What do you think? I guess the first one that comes to mind for me is faithfulness. I wish we were together and we could visit about it. But for today, we will close our lesson. So something that I'd love to ask you is to share a time when you think that your fruit of the Spirit was revealed. The powers inside of you that maybe you didn't even know were there, but in a challenging moment, you realized your own power. Some examples that are given here are, perhaps you were surprised to find that you could be patient, waiting for your turn when you didn't think you could. Or maybe you confronted a problem with honesty and willingness. Or maybe you handled disappointment better than you used to. That inner strength, that ability to exhibit the fruits of the Spirit, that is something that grows as we practice it. So when we practice showing patience and love and joy and peacefulness and gentleness, when small things happen in our lives, then we have more likelihood to be able to show those powers when big things happen in our lives, when really big challenges come. We discover we have the inner power to meet it because we've practiced living with harmony and spirit in little ways. Following the path of wisdom teachers like Jesus means the power of Spirit is always flowing through us. So that power, those fruits of Spirit, they're always there. They're always there. And as you practice them, you'll know for yourself that they're there. And then when something big and challenging happens, because big and challenging things will happen in our lives, you'll surprise yourself. You'll find out that it's there. So, okay, I think that's it for today. Let's end with our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. Power of God protects me. And the presence of God watches over me. Wherever I am, God is, and all is well. We love you. We bless you. We appreciate you. And we behold the Christ in you. I hope that you're well. I miss seeing you. I'm looking forward to seeing you again soon. I know all of your Sunday school teachers are, and I look forward to sharing the next lesson with you next time. Bye.